This is a ManeHustle Media podcast.
Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Jackie O and you're listening to Militantly Mixed.
Yo, this is Rashani from the Single Simulcast. And when I'm not making you laugh or making up parody songs, I'm kicking back, listening to Militantly Mixed.
I would like to acknowledge that the Militantly Mixed podcast is recorded on the traditional lands of the Chumash and the Tongva people, and I wish to pay my respects to the people of those nations, both past and present. Hey y'all, welcome to Militantly Mixed, the podcast about race and identity from the mixed race perspective. I am your host, Charmaine, aka Mixed Girl Maine, the busiest mixed race, bisexual, polyamorous, atheist, comic book nerd, cat mom, mask making podcaster in this podcasting game. This is episode 107, and I don't know how many times I've recorded this intro at this point. I can't get through it without bawling my eyes out, so I'm going to try to avoid that on this particular take because there's no point in putting up an intro if you can't understand it because I'm crying through it. And I just want to apologize in advance for how low my energy is. I'm sure by the time this is airing that y'all are aware that the actor Chadwick Boseman passed away on Friday due to a secret 4-year battle with colon cancer. And putting aside that feels very strange to grieve so hard for someone that you've never met in person. There's parallels between he and I that hit very close to home. And so it's not just that I do feel like I'm legitimately grieving this actor who I've never met, but I see a lot of him in either myself or in people in my life, and it feels very personal, even though it's not. And I have been pretty emotional for the last couple of days because of it. And just so you know, I'm taking breaks in between this as much as possible to try to get through it without leaving tears all over this intro. So he was 42 years old. I know that the publications keep saying 43. I don't know why math is so hard, but he's 42 years old. He's 4 years older. He's 4 days older than I am. And we were born the same year, a few days apart from each other. And I'm 42, so math. To me personally, Chadwick is someone who not only just an amazing, talented actor, he carries the weight of, I mean, I feel bad for him to say this. He carries the weight of a significant portion of the Black community because of the kind of roles that he has played. In biopics, he has played some of our major people: Jackie Robinson, James Brown, Thurgood Marshall. But in particular, and for me, an added layer of why I'm so upset at his loss is he brought to life T'Challa, the King of Wakanda, and the Black Panther in the Marvel movie in 2018. If you've been with me for a while, you do know already that I'm a huge comic book person. So much so that I have a comic book podcast on the side of this, and I've also opened my own comic book shop. Comic books surround my life and have for almost the whole of my life. And a character like Black Panther has empowered me and given me hope that I would see more characters like the people I grew up with or myself ever since I was little. And I never thought we would ever see a Black Panther on screen in live action. I never thought it. There's actually proof of me on Facebook from 7 or 8 years ago saying they'll never give us Black Panther. And so I was so overcome with joy when he was cast, because I knew that of all actors, he had the training and the dramatic chops to be able to give the character the weight that it needed, but also he had skin in the game in terms of this being a valued character that would live on well past him, which when I was thinking of that, I was thinking of that in terms of just that eventually he'll age out of the character. I didn't realize at the time he was cast and at the time he was playing the character that he was already battling colon cancer. My father also passed away from pancreatic and colon cancer. So I've been getting colonoscopies since I was in my 30s because my dad died at 38. And so knowing how difficult surviving colon cancer is, the fact that he lasted for 4 years during his battle and that he did so much work during that time overwhelms me, because I know that not many of us could do that. So I'm going to cut this shorter than I've been speaking because of how many times I've attempted to record this, and I'm actually getting through it this time without too much pauses and tears. I just want to end this section saying that for those of you that grieve celebrities or you feel strange about it, just understand that you do have a sense of living with these people. They're on your TV screens, they're on your computer screens, you're on their phone constantly. In my case in particular, Black Panther is on repeat in my house on my TV almost definitely weekly, but for a period of very long time, every day, multiple times a day. I've probably watched that movie more than even The Godfather, which is the whole reason I went to film school, was because The Godfather, and I used to watch that constantly as well, probably well into the 1,000 times. And that was over the course of from 15 to 30 something. In the last 2 years, I've exceeded that with Black Panther because of how often I've watched it and how much it means to me. So I do want to take this time to thank Chadwick for his contribution to Blackness and culture forever, which will live long past him, and for portraying a character that is so significant to many of us in such a thoughtful and weighted way. And I have no idea what the next step is, but I'm just so distraught at the idea that he's not going to be here any longer. Oh, fuck. Sorry about that. I really thought I had it together, this particular cut. But, like I said, this man's been living in my house for the last 2.5 years, almost daily. So it does feel pretty rough to think that that's the only way I'm ever going to see him again, is in what movies I have available. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and move on so we can get onto it. Before I move on, I do want to apologize directly to my guest today. Because of my low energy and my depression leading into this episode, I don't feel that my intro is going to match the energy that the episode deserves. And I was so excited to finally get Danielle on the show because I wanted to get her on the show back in June. And this was when I was doing the solo episodes, and it was right before the hiatus. So I knew I wasn't going to be able to get her until August anyway. But I was really excited, and to feel the way that I'm feeling now leading into sharing her episode, I feel really bad. So I am sorry, Danielle, if you're listening, that I am coming at the start of your episode with such depressed energy. But for everybody else, my guest this week is Danielle. She is one of our regulars on the social distancing hangouts. And for the last 4 or 5 months, 5 or 6 months, I guess at this point, I've been getting to know her a little bit at a time along with the rest of the group because she's there every week and participating. Danielle comes to us from Brazil, and she has traveled all over the world, but she's lived in Spain and she is currently living in the UK. And a big portion of what we discussed in this episode was kind of talking about the concept of mixedness for Brazil and how colonization and this eugenics movement that existed in Brazil sort of crafted the racial landscape of the country for many centuries. And one thing that I'm going to do here right now that's a little bit different than normal is, well, first let me explain. When you do an episode of Militantly Mixed, we're just having a conversation. I don't like to do a proper Q&A because I want you to be able to feel like you can share your experience on your own terms. I may have a couple questions for you preloaded, but I'm not going to do it in a Q&A style. I'm mostly going to let the conversation dictate whether or not I even ask some of those questions, unless I kind of have to get us into the conversation. And when you experience having one of these recordings with me for the first time, you're also possibly experiencing having your very first or one of your very first open conversations about your mixedness without judgment or somebody telling you, no, it's not like that. And so it's a very unique experience for people who come on this show because we're not out there in the world openly talking about our mixedness too often, with people that understand too. That's the other part. So that hour goes by really fast, and almost every episode recording ends in someone going, oh man, I have so much more to say. But people don't like to sit through podcast episodes that exceed an hour, so I try to keep it as tight as possible. And in this case, it was similar. We talked for a while, and there was more to kind of fill in to explain some of the things that Danielle was talking about. While I can't get into it because it will be too long, I just do want to kind of drop in a few of the points that she posted about on the Militantly Mixed private group podcast page, because she was trying to explain some of those things that were sort of missing from our discussion today. And one of those is that in Brazil, during their colonization by the Portuguese, there wasn't it was never necessarily forbidden for people of different racial categories to have relationships, but there was a sort of unofficial apartheid and probably still kind of exists based off of what Daniel was saying. As they developed further in culture, there is indigenous people, there is descendants of the African slave trade, there are Asians, predominantly Japanese in large numbers, and of course European immigrants. And so the racial landscape of Brazil is very broad, and there are many, many racial categories in existence, but they also don't culturally speak about race as openly as probably we do here in the US or other places. And their civil rights movement was a little bit different than ours here in the US, in that they had a eugenics movement in which misogyny was encouraged, but in the direction of trying to whiten the people. So they were encouraging European immigrants to come in and intermarry with the Black and brown Brazilians so that they can make people whiter, which is wild, but that was a thing. So different than it was here in the States or maybe in other parts of the world where eugenics was applied. It was usually done, or it was done in other places as more of a studying the others or erasing the other. In this case, it's erasing the other, but through approved and maybe even culturally forced misogyny towards whiteness. Very interesting, or misogyny with a focus on trying to whiten the people. And in addition to that, she was mentioning that it's actually really quite radical nowadays when Brazilians acknowledge their Blackness or their indigenous heritage, because the culture doesn't actively talk about race as openly as maybe here in North America. And even in her home case, and you'll hear her say it later, she thought she was white with a good tan most of her life. And it really took having exposure to other people for her to kind of shift her racial identity. And as it is with all of us, it has changed probably multiple times throughout her life as that has happened. So again, I can't really get into how much she wrote, but it is on the Militantly Mixed podcast page if you want to read more of a description of what she talks about here. And I hope that I chose the points that explain the bit that she felt that was missed out, but I'm not 100% sure if I did that. But what you'll hear in this episode is us kind of discussing the racial environment of Brazil and her own personal experience, and then her experience within her racial identity when she has lived in Spain and the UK. And I could probably have multiple episodes with Danielle because there is so much in all of those places to unpack. about how people treat racial identity, but this is the first one. I want to go ahead and call it the first one. One thing that we're doing differently with this episode, and will be something that I'm looking forward to doing more and more in the future, is this is the very first video recorded interview that I'm going to be sharing with y'all publicly. So what I'm going to be doing going forward is, if my guest agrees to be on video with me for the discussion, I am going to release the video version of the interview on Patreon at the same time that I release the audio version for y'all to be listening to, the way you're listening to it today on your podcatcher. It's going to be released around the same time, and for a week, possibly 2 weeks, it will be exclusively on the Patreon site to give the people who are paying to keep this show going and growing, they would have access to it so they can see these actual mixed people's faces that have been coming on the show every week. So I'm going to give it a week or two to try to feel it out and see how many people are checking in and watching them. And then after that period of time, I will release it publicly to the YouTube channel. And the reason why I'm going to release it early to the Patreon sponsors is because like I said, they're the people who are keeping the show going. I cannot afford to do the show on my own anymore, both because of the nature of my current finances, but also because as the audience has grown, the financial responsibilities have grown with it. And so y'all have to think the 32 or so people that are basically paying every month to keep this going. And I want to be able to give them something that is an extra benefit for their contribution. If you would like to have access to the early release of the videos, you can sponsor the show at anything higher than the $5 level at patreon.com/militantlymixed. There's always a link to the show notes there's always a link to that in the show notes. Like I said, you can donate as at the $5 level or above, and you'll have access to those videos. But you can donate as low as $1 to as high as anything you wish every month and get different reward levels depending on what you select. But without the Patreon sponsors, this show will go on a very extended hiatus until I find funds again. So thank you to our Patreon sponsors, and I hope that this added benefit is enjoyable for y'all. And I don't want to dissuade people from participating in the show now that there's a video element, because I do have guests that don't share their picture on the episode art either. I'm going to continue to interview anybody who wants to be on the show, but if the person is interested in allowing me to record the video, then I will be releasing it this way. So it won't be every episode until such time as I decide to make it every episode. But for now, it'll be, if the person is comfortable with it, I will upload it. And if they're not, we'll just have the audio as per usual. No matter what, we're always going to be an audio podcast. And then hopefully one day there'll just be a video element as well. So this first one with Danielle, she was pretty hyped to come on the show for the video element and be my first person for the video element. And I'm really excited that she did that with me as well. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming our latest cousin to the Militantly Mixed family, Danielle. So this is the very first official Militantly Mixed podcast video interview. I mean, it's not that I don't video when I chat with people, but this is the first time we're actually going to share it on our social media platform. So thank you very much, Danielle, for being my very first Militantly Mixed video. Why don't you introduce yourself to everybody and let everybody know what we're talking about today?
Okay, so I'm Danielle. I'm 38 and I was born and raised in Brazil, and I lived there up to 2006. Then I moved to Spain. I think I spent there a year. As a tourist, or I traveled between Spain and Brazil for a year. Then I lived there 6 years, I think, more or less, working, so on, legally. And because this is important to say, I had a work permit. Okay,
Right.
so I was quite privileged on that. I left Spain in 2014, spent 2 years in Brazil, and then as I already had a passport, I came to UK, where I live now for 3 years. So I'm going to my 4th year, actually. I completed 4 years here, actually, in this month. And so, what else do I have to say? I was rising. My dad was quite wealthy up when I was up to my 8 years old, and then he broke. He was he made like those radios, you know, the walkie-talkie ones. And then when the cell phones took over, he just broke. Then I had a really prosperous childhood, really nice neighborhood, nice schools. Then I removed it. My parents got divorced. They came with my mom to live with her family, and we split. I have a brother, an older brother, and they split. My brother stayed with my father, and I stayed with my mom.
How far apart in age are you and your brother?
Pardon?
How far apart in age are you and your brother?
He is 1 year and 8 months older than me.
Oh, okay, so really close in age.
Yeah. So, but then we were split, and I came to live with my mom. And then everything changed because my mom didn't have a profession. His father is pretty wealthy. He's really well-done guy in money, but really he's not generous as a father. So he had a lot of difficulties. She didn't have profession. She didn't work. She was not really going for her life. So everything changed. And then I always had food and a roof, I would say, good education, but that's it. And then what else? And then when we moved it to another city, the city I was born. And I started working when I was 14 years old. Then I went to the university, and when I finished the university, I went to Spain. That's it for now.
And so we've talked a little bit. So you are a regular on the social distancing hangout. So I've gotten to know you over the last couple of months, and we've talked a lot about mixed race in Brazil and the different dynamics of colorism and identity and all of that kind of stuff. So I am glad to be able to share that story on Militantly Mixed, because we haven't really quite gotten into it yet. From what I remember you talking about before, like your awareness of your identity and like your skin color has changed over the years that you lived in. You want to talk a little bit about that?
So, my father and my brother, we are really alike. I think I really like my father. I really look like my father and my brother. But on my mom's family, we're pretty diverse. Me and my brother were the darkest ones. And I do have a cousin and an uncle that they got like dark skin, but they don't have curly hair. They don't have like black heritage. My grandparents, they are white. Okay. I would say maybe they're not white in the US, but in Brazil, they are red as white people. Okay. And so at the beginning, I was surrounded by whiteness, also on TV shows, because I don't think it's so children show presenter that looked like me until I was maybe, I think I watched the show when it was about a bit before my parents, a bit before my dad broke. But when we moved it, on that place, we couldn't watch this TV. I couldn't watch this TV show because we didn't have the sign of this channel. So I had a glance of a presenter that looked like me when I was maybe 8 years old. And then everything else I remember, they were like monoracial black people, or they would be European, because in Brazil it was pretty common for black and mixed. But when I say mixed, I would say black and people that are biracial, black and white, make like employees or poor people or gangsters. And then you have the other European ones doing all the other, the other roles. And this is what I watched until I even put it here because I really like this actress. Until I watched Patricia França, it was in 93. I was 9 years old. I think my parents were already divorced. I was living amongst my mom already. And it was the first time I saw someone that looked like me as a female. Like me. Because my mom's family is diverse, but I'm the darkest one. And some women, they do have a sort of indigenous features and a little bit darker skin. But I was the one that people like look like this, when I stand together with them, I'm the black one. You know what I mean?
You like, they can tell your family and your facial features, but it's just the skin color is what
I would say. I don't really say it's thing real like people. They used to say I am real like my mom, but I think that's because they don't really had a lot of. They didn't share a lot with my father. So I really think I am. If I use the face app, I am my father younger.
Yeah, same. I look just like my dad too.
And so I thought, actually, before I saw these actors, I thought I was a white person with a tan. Because people would remind me, your color, exotic, you're exotic.
Oh, so you would get exotic too.
Like a lot. By people from my family, they would say, and even out of my family, they would say that
Really?
And and I didn't know what it means. And then I saw that actress in it, and I thought, so I don't look like the other one. So I look like her. And it was the first time I could mirror and really realize that I was not white. Because before I thought I just had a tan, actually.
Well, I mean, this is the thing about representation that like, I don't think people started to realize until we started verbalizing representation matters, because you go through all your childhood not seeing anybody that looks like you. So either you're a weirdo or something else is happening, but no one's telling us, actually, they're only showing white people or they're only showing, light-skinned people. So you just feel.
And actually, many people from my family, they are like white skin. They don't pass as white. They are white. And then we have the one that have mixed features but still light skin. And then there's me and my brother. And so by that moment in Brazil, I will listen a lot things like, we are all black because we all have black.
Right.
We all have black. We all have native. We are all mixed of everything. And then, okay, so I might be just like them. What do you saying?
Right. Yeah.
Because when it comes to talk about the difference, normally people say that we are all mixed. So why you have different all mixed?
Are there parts of Brazil where it's noticeable that there are indigenous people? Like, do the people who are mixed within indigenous heritage or are living within indigenous populations, are they visible in Brazil or are they just kind of hidden too?
I am from São Paulo. São Paulo is the southeast. It's pretty mixed. It has a little bit of everything. But I think if you go more to the northwest, you can see a bit more, or around the capital now you can see a lot of the indigenous features and people. But São Paulo is pretty like a bit of everything. But this is going to be very according where you go. Because, for example, both the parents of my mom, they're both light skinned, they were white, but my grandmother's mother, my great grandmother, she was dark skinned. She had like indigenous features, and some of their sons had my mom's uncles, they had like dark skin and indigenous features. So one of my uncle has it, and little of my cousins too. So in São Paulo is a little bit like this. You're gonna have a mix. You're gonna have people that they're explicitly white. Others they are like you can see they're black, but they have the color scheme different. Or in São Paulo you get all shades. So on the south they're majority white. On the northwest they are more indigenous. In the northeast they're much more black people.
And what is like in your experience as you were figuring out like how you look compared to the rest of the people around you, was there like affinity group? Were there people like they had Black pride or they had indigenous pride, or what was that a part of the culture at all? Or that's a very like US type of mentality probably.
So curiously, we never had a former apartheid. Okay, it's a very ideological apartheid,
right?
Because again, why are you talking about this? If everybody's mixed, this is people are they show their proudness of being mixed when it's convenient for them. But if they see like for example now there's a really serious problem with indigenous people. And because they are like sustained by the government. So now people hate them because they got all the benefits that the white working class, because I work so hard and it's because, but
right.
So when we're going to talk about ethnicity or race, but we're all mixed. What are you talking about? We're all mixed, we're the same. Brazil is very ambiguous. We don't have, it's not explicit. Our fear of other ethnicities, of different ethnicities, is not explicit. It's really subliminal. So we don't really distinguish, until internet, you couldn't really distinguish a lot. And this is one thing that will happen on my family. We are all made, we are the same. But I felt that I was different. I know I'm different of you. But when I realized I was not white, it's not that the things they came just like this. It was just like, I am different of you. But I still didn't know exactly, because we don't talk about it.
Right.
We don't talk about, you were like this because of these and these. No, we don't talk. Now, of course, at the beginning, because we have internet. But when I was being raised, we didn't talk about it.
Were there ever any places that like you weren't allowed to go with your mother? Because in my case, my Japanese side, nobody knew we were Black, so we never went to Japanese places unless we were. Because if we ran into somebody, we were a friend of my grandmother's friend. We're like the children of my grandmother's friend or something like that. That way, if people thought we were Black, they didn't associate the Blackness with my grandmother. So we avoided a lot of places. There was only certain spots that we would go together as a family where people knew we were a family. And this is me looking like this. This is basically the same shade as my grandma, my Japanese grandma, except for when Black people would identify me, she'd be nervous other people could identify my Blackness too. Did you have anything like that?
We explicitly not, but recently my mom told me, she told me something that gave me the creeps. We don't, as we don't talk about that, you don't really have a place that you shouldn't go. Of course, that by the time, I don't remember a place, but I knew it. She told me a history, for example, that me and my brother and I, we were in a swimming pool, and one of her friends didn't want to have her daughter to get into the swimming pool because we were bathing in there. So it's not something like, you can't come here. It's just like, maybe if there is these people in there, I'm not going to let my kids be around, or, oh no, it's time to go. Oh no, go to do the thing. Go to pick me up something. So people, they don't talk.
Right.
So
Yeah.
if it happens, I hadn't explicitly, it didn't happen.
Right.
But so for example, I know that maybe if you're white, you can't just go to a favela. Oh, I need to short my path. You know, I need to walk to my work. I'm late. Just want to short my path and go through the favela. You can't do that. I mean, because you clearly don't look like you're there. Or sometimes because of police violence. If you know you're black, when you know you're black, you're not going to walk to that path because maybe somebody's going to think I'm doing something wrong.
Right.
But it's not something that is explicit.
So
It's
as you were
like
traveling, oh, sorry.
It's something more ideological than like, and anyway, everything is ideological. It's something really subliminal. I mean, different from US.
Right. And so as you traveled through the world, then how has like your personal racial and identity shifted, if at all, as you've kind of gone throughout Europe and things like that?
So there was me on Spain. I finished the university where I could talk a bit more about race. But actually, I even taught on a place for improvement of Black people's life. But sometimes I don't think they saw me as an equal. And I was sort of, maybe I'm just not Black enough, or it's something on my head, because they were an ONG and they tried to make accessibility to education for the poor neighborhoods that were around. And the place was the Núcleo de Consciência Negra, the Black Consciousness Nucleus. So sometimes I didn't really felt invited to. I taught in there, I helped it, but I didn't feel I was invited on the discussions. You know, the organization, the place. But I volunteered there as any other white people could. But I wasn't part of the organization, so I pretty feel more like, something is going on here. But and then I start thinking, I know I'm not biracial. I know I'm not Black. I know I'm not white. But I didn't know what. I still didn't.
Yeah. What does that mean?
What is that? Yeah. What did that mean? I was in university, but then I lived in university. I went traveling. I went to Spain. I was working in stage arts. I made a lot of street theater parties. And one day, one of those, you know, the place where you change the backstage, where it changed. I'm not sure if he was a guy from South America. He was not Spanish, but then he used the word mulata to tell me, "Oh, Priscilla, really pretty." I think he said something like, he didn't want to be mean, and then, how can you tell me that? How can you call me that?
Right.
And then I was like, oh my God, I am so pissed because you call him mulata. And then I said, you know what? I identify as a Black, so you can call me Black. Don't call me mulata. It's very, I just felt, nobody never called me that in my life. So I just felt,
Is it understood that the meaning and the origin of mulata, like, is it understood that it's connected to like a mule and like a non?
So I don't know if he did, but by the time I already knew it, but it didn't came to my mind to discuss it with him.
Because you were just kind of triggered in the moment.
I was just kind of but I couldn't articulate, and then in some places in South America, people call themselves mulata as an important term, but in Brazil, because we're colonized by Portuguese, mula is the mule and the horse. So we suppose that who is going to be the mule and the horse, the male horse, now in this colonial context.
Yeah.
So for for me, it was pretty like shocking. But of course, maybe he didn't have this intention. So just identify as black. So you call me negra as much as you want, but don't call me that word again. And then I was just start thinking, I'm not black, but I don't like to be called mulatto. And I started to look for something in Spain, but they didn't really talk. I couldn't really see. Maybe they talked already, but I really didn't have internet by then. It was 2009, maybe. I didn't have a lot of access on internet, and I was living in a really small village. I was in a big village, and then I moved to a smaller one. And the black people you see, they were the recent immigrants, but actually they had, because Spain colonized Guinea Equatorial, I think. So they have a history with blackness. It's just like they just don't consider it. It's all right. You still find in Spain really like a really medieval representation of black people. There is blackface when at the end of the year they make the three king magicians. You know, you know this Christian thing that the three kings they visited Christ and Balthazar. So one of them were black,
and they would blackface.
And it's still common. You get representations of him with the painting.
Yeah,
and
they do that in a lot of places in Europe where they have that kind of a
out of Spain
performance or something. Yeah, outside of Spain, they do it in other places.
Really, I'm shocked because in Spain the King's Day, which 6th of January, is much more important than Christmas. Originally, the 6th of January is the place that is the day to give to the kids. You know, now it's changing, but they still make that. They put the chariots with people in costumes on top, and then they just go on a private street. And some products still represent black people with those sort of Bollywood sort of.
Right.
You know, it's still happening in Spain now. People talk really. It's not something natural. I mean, yeah, it's something relatively new.
And they're real passive about it too, where it's just kind of like, it's tradition, you know, like it's not racist, it's just how it was. But when you're sitting there as a black person or a mixed black person and you see it, because it happens also with like my British family too, the gollywogs and stuff that were around the house. It's just like, how do you look at this horrible representation of a black person and just think it's just tradition, no big deal, you know?
So I think that when I was in Spain, I left Spain in 2014. I was there in 2006. By then, when I started in Spain, it was really difficult to talk with a Spanish person. But on the other side, if you see like if somebody performed racism over someone else, it was pretty common that somebody would tell them off, because in Spain they pretty just tell them off all the time. They're really, which it was something for me as a Brazilian. Wow,
because you didn't talk about it. Where do you come from?
Yeah, where I come from, we don't talk. We don't go off on people easily because everybody can have a gang. So you just sort of, you just submit yourself and try to escape. Or just say, no, you're right, you know. But they really fight. So I could see that they have those. They don't see what can be wrong with that. But when they see something that's wrong, you're probably gonna see two or three old ladies just telling off on their aggressor. Probably.
Oh wow, old ladies, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's cute. That's kind of cute, actually.
I saw some or young people that come because you have a lot of in Spain you have this thing after the dictatorship that everything got liberated, and then you can see young people also like but still sometimes the same young people that defend somebody of suffering racism, they're gonna clap for the representation of the skin. Right. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's very ambiguous. So it's really
like selective activism.
Exactly. It's a select. Yeah. It's difficult to make them think about it. But when you have to be called on action, they are pretty easygoing on this. But they don't really think if they can feedback this system by by commenting or keep buying this product or not. So it's both of the, and they still call black people like brunettes.
What was the word?
Brunette? Is brunette?
Oh, okay.
Brunette?
Oh, funny. Like brown hair, but as skin?
They still call them brunette, which was something that was happening in Brazil when I was there. They call brunette or brunette, like a little.
Yeah.
And which now in Brazil is pretty switching. People are getting more powerful about this. So a word that I was called a lot, like brunette, brunette, and jumbo brunette. Jumbo is a fruit that might have my skin color.
Okay. It's always food with us. It's always like our skin is with food.
And or chocolate or
right.
So, but now in Brazil it's pretty like no, you don't. It's getting another, but still now people will still call black people or like Latin mixed black people like me brunette or they still use it.
Okay. And then as you transfer as you travel over to the UK, I know that you've talked about that you live in a predominantly like black area. Is it mostly native black Brits or is it an immigrant community? Like where are you at now?
So I live on the heart, well, not on the heart, but on the side of the heart of Notting Hill Carnival.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. Which
is a pretty popular black and political black manifestation in here. Mm-hmm. So there is a lot of native black people around, but despite gentrification, you still can see a lot of black people that are from here.
And they have the big parade or the big festival every year. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is not going to be online, unfortunately. Yeah. But yeah. You can see, I can see more British, and I think the foreign they are much more like Muslim and Asian, a little bit of Asian, but I think most of the black people here, I can see that they are British.
And do you feel like a part of the community?
No.
No, you don't? Oh, no.
Because this is one thing about London. I didn't find my way in. You know what I mean? Because despite this is the carnival, I don't know where they play. I don't know how to participate. I'm still like looking for it, and I don't know how to get into it. And so I don't really feel part. London is really a difficult place for you to bond with people, or maybe it's me. This is maybe because I felt so different, so used to be otherized. It's just something like, well, let's say maybe it's my way of being. So I'm still figuring out if I am like this because I was otherized. Or I am because I am like this. I was otherized. Or, I still didn't find a lot the balance.
Right. I mean, it's part of the whole journey. Like even like with my mix. There's no place I go that I feel a fully part of the thing. Like, black people are more welcoming, Japanese people, not so much. British people, it's like, oh, wait, but that white relative is your, like, how is it possible that you're related, you share, family? It's especially in England. Like when I was walking around with my cousin, my white, fully 100% white cousin in England, and we would tell people we were cousins, people would just be like, adopted? Like there were all the questions were everything that didn't mean that eventually a white British person made a baby with someone non-white. Like it was very clear it was not expected that was even possible. It's like that.
Yeah, well, do you think we're more like white people or Eskimos or?
It was mostly white. Well, it was all white people that made me feel that way. Like, I'm trying to think. There was one South Asian woman that we talked to at the museum, and we said we were cousins. And because at first we're walking around, I was on crutches. When I was traveling there, I was on crutches because I had a knee injury, and they were trying to figure out like, how did the brown person who should have been the caretaker end up with this white person? So it was like, are you helping her? It was one of those types of things. Like, are you helping her, like, because you're a white man, what are you, like, what's happening? And when we explained that we were cousins, it was also just like, okay, it was very, but this was coming from a South Asian woman who clearly was British. Like, she had a British accent. She lived there. She knew the history and stuff, and she was walking us around because we had kind of like a semi-private tour thing that we were doing.
Okay.
And it just seemed like every so often she'd look back and be like, cousins, huh? Like eventually she was going to hear the lie. Like eventually it was going to come out that there was something else going on there. And I didn't know how to communicate, because when you see another brown person also looking at you like, are you sure? You're just like, all right, okay. What can you do?
People here, they don't look at me. I mean, here in my area, actually, I also live in a place here. I don't have neighbors. We live in a place, and I think the neighbor is Potter in here. Because it is the Guardian. It's not a common house. So I think they look at us more like intrigued because of it, more than because of how I look like. And of course, a couple of guys, they came to like my phone and, oh, where are you from? I always say I'm Spanish. I don't say I'm Brazilian.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't say. It's not that I hate Brazil, but back in Spain and sometimes here, when I say I'm Brazilian, people start behaving stupid.
Oh, expectations.
They start behaving like, oh, Brazilian football.
Oh no. Ugh.
Oh gosh. And then if he's a guy, there are chances that this guy is gonna. Yeah.
Right. I get it.
I mean, why don't you already put your hands inside your pants then?
Yeah.
Well, did you know what? So, but sometimes I still prefer somebody saying that than saying behaving like an idiot, because it's just like,
right.
Don't talk like this.
People are such trash.
So I usually hear say I'm Spanish.
Okay.
But I do go to a place and make free yoga. I do feel pretty welcome in there, and I always try to push a little bit of conversation. But people don't talk, and we are pretty mixed. They're Asian, the teacher's black, they're mixed people, they're white people, but I don't know.
Well, I think there's something to what you said earlier. You said something about like maybe because you were othered for so long that you don't really know how to engage. And even as like within our group, we all had our awkward period in our social group where we're like, okay, this happens to you. Oh, okay, that happens to me too. Okay, so we have this in common, and then we get a little bit more empowered every time we find someone who has a similar experience, because it's just like, okay, not as alone. So as we learn to talk to each other, hopefully that will translate out in the world when we can actually learn to talk to other people. Because for now, when I talk to people outside of the mixed community about being mixed, I feel like I'm lecturing or educating, or I'm some kind of a zoo exhibit for them. Like, oh, these interesting mixed people, whereas like when I talk to you or the rest of the group, it's just like, load off to just be able to talk about what we experience.
But I'm saying, you told me that about like feeling accepted. I guess if you go to Brazil, the first thing people think that you're Japanese.
They would think I'm Japanese?
Really.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe people that are not the first generation, but the most other people, maybe not people that have really descent of Japanese, but most part of the people are gonna, because Japanese is the first reference of Asian people.
Of Asians there, yeah.
Because there is a big colon of Japanese.
Right.
So when things get better, give a stroll on there. I go with you.
That would be even so wild.
Even if people that have indigenous, Brazilian indigenous heritage, they are mistaken by Japanese, because on Brazil, most of the tribes, they have like a link with Asian.
Mm-hmm.
You can see by the features,
Like the
especially
features.
the eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know North America, or in the world of North America. I guess Mexico also is not really the same. They don't really have the same ethnicity.
Yeah, that would be so strange because there's never been a case in which I've ever been accepted or thought of as Japanese. Sometimes Asian, but it's Filipino because they look for like, well, Filipinos are mixed, so you must be Filipino. Like that makes the most sense. If I get to Brazil, and it is one of the places that I want to travel, and somebody thinks I'm Japanese, I don't know how I would react. I think I would be just amazed.
If you go, I'm sure people, people like that don't know, well, I studied Japanese. I love Japanese cinema.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, if I look at it, even without knowing it, we know it makes, but most of the people do mistake you by Japanese with pride, right? For you. If
that would be awesome.
Day, that'd be awesome.
It would be fun. That's so crazy.
And here, I think I just blend with the people.
Right, that's possible.
People don't look at me. I mean, twice I was asked where I was from. One was a guy that he is trying to, and the other was a man. She was here. We in front of our house. We have some steps, so people normally come from the street and they see there to have snack. And this black woman talked to me, and then she asked. So she knows I'm not black. Oh God, no!
Oh no!
She asked me where I'm from, maybe because of my accent,
right?
And then, but there's another place I work for. People normally they know I'm Brazilian. Normally they know I'm South. Here they really know I'm Brazilian. In Spain they thought I was South American. Okay. In Brazil they thought Brazilian thing sometimes. I was asking in Brazil if I was Indian or American or Arabic.
Really?
I swear, people look at me. Oh, you're so beautiful. Look Arabic. I was up to I was always mistaken, and actually, my father always told we were Arabic,
but there's no evidence of it.
I made my DNA test, and I already knew we didn't, and then of course the DNA just confirmed it. But I think he was really ashamed of his color because he like the same color as me, same hair, same kind of hair. But I discovered that my grandmother, didn't like black people. She didn't like dark-skinned people because it looks like she was both. Like, of course, slavery was already abolished, but she was she was orphan, and looks like she got married by force because this guy paid the money to somebody. Okay. So she was given to this guy, and my grandfather, and he's a dark skin, my father, and he was dark skinned man, and then she got sort of traumatized. So I think because of it, he internalized that he was Arabic.
So do you feel like you're being a little radical and like embracing your identity? Like, do you, considering that your family has different feeling about how you are?
Oh goodness, I feel radical. I don't feel radical, but I feel like I am a teenager again.
If you're going through it all over again.
Every time I discover something about myself, it's as if I was a teenager again. I want to go and know and everything. I want to talk about. I don't really think my family knows because I stopped talking to my mom's family. I stopped talking to them.
Right.
Because we are not the same vibe. And I don't think if I talk to them, they would repeat the same old story. Right. Oh, we're all the same. We're all from the same place. We're all mixed and blah, blah, blah.
And that's not helping.
So I would say, well, I know they're going to say that. So I don't think I'm it's values. But it's very liberating. So because of it, I feel like maybe not as a teenager, but I remember that when I was 18, when I completed 18, for me it was amazing because I was in university, and then I could do everything I couldn't because my mom always kept me.
Right.
She always kept me home. And then it was just like, oh, they were outside. So every time I discover something new about me, I live it again. And then it's really liberating. And it's like, if it means to be rebellious for some people, I'm not rebelling. I'm just sort of.
You're living your life.
Exactly. I'm living. I feel I'm living myself more. Like I'm living more like myself. I enjoy myself a bit more.
That's the part that makes me the most happy about having this community and like developing, is that we can be encouraging for each other and actually just be like excited about our identity as you know, however we land, because there's been so much of, I think, all of our time wasted on but like us not having permission to love our full selves, you know?
And when I was back in Brazil, I haven't been in Brazil for 2 years. I made a very good dance school. Because, well, I was working with circles and stage art, so I'm going to make dance and then I'm going to work in the UK and everything's going to be nice. So even on the dance school, I actually had to think a lot about my body, all aspects of my body. And then I choose to make a work about oh gosh, there was something important now. I don't remember. Ethnicity, femininity, and gender. Ethnicity, gender. I forgot the other aspect because I took gender and ethnicity, and the other guy took other two aspects, and the other guy we made like a triangle on this work, and then I had to work a lot on it, but it's still we didn't talk about mixedness. We don't talk about mixedness because in Brazil we spent a long time without talking about ethnicity or race. And when it started, I think we are sort of adopting the US model, but there is a lot of ideological when I started with militant units, I started thinking maybe this ideological thing about race in the US is also something supremacist. It's also a supremacist thought that we shouldn't really take to our discussion. But I think if I speak about that now, I'm going to be just deleted, canceled. But, that sentence for me, because I think the discourse now is rising and is really rising on this discourse on which everybody is Black, even if you're mixed, you are Black. And actually, in our census, we have Black, and inside Black, the word, we don't use Black, actually, we use a word, but it's the Portuguese version of that word, the N word, but in Brazil, it doesn't have the same weight. It's not
right. Okay, gotcha.
So we use this word, this big word, and then we have Black and mixed.
Okay.
Still, and then they all part of the N category.
Got it.
But again, it's not in Brazil. It has another way.
It has a different meaning.
It's a different meaning. People are trying to use Black because Black is the color, so people are trying to use more the color name instead of the race name.
Right. Yeah.
Because in many of Portuguese expressions, the color is positive.
Okay.
It has a positive meaning on that. So I think if I arrive now and say, I consider myself Black and mixed, people would just, what are you saying? Because what are you saying? Because I have seen it. I've seen many people like asking, what do you all think I am? What do you consider I am? And then I say, well, this boy here is mixed. This girl here, she's mixed. White people are saying, but you can't really. But I think there is a difference between your personal experience and what is imposed to you because I feel that I don't have an experience on blackness by the time I was rising.
Right.
So am I black? Am I not? So I prefer always to highlight, well, I'm Black Latin. I am mixed Latin and Black, because I sort of analyzing all the experience I have. I know now that I was read as a Black person.
Right.
But I had no idea while I was being raised. You know, Brad Pitt and Macaulay Culkin were my idols.
It's
so I, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh gosh,
Right.
Shame.
Well, I mean, again, like we're left in the dark in a big part because we don't talk about it. You know, like I think in the U.S. we probably talk about it maybe more than what it seems like you probably did. But
you surely do.
But even in my experience, when my parents were two different colors, like obviously two different colors, it was still an outsider that pointed it out. You know, like I was third grade the first time someone said, I can't hang out with you because your dad is, the way she said, we were little kids. So she said poop colored. But you know what I'm saying? Like it took an outsider for me to go, oh yeah, they are different. You know, like because it was just my life and nobody told me, hey kid, one day you're going to have somebody come up to you and say that this is a problem for them, you know?
Yeah.
So it makes sense that like we attach to what we can attach to. If it's not because they look like us, then it's because they did something that we do. And that's just what we dealt with. Like, it's just how we had to be. I am empowered by saying, because I do identify mostly with my Blackness, but I am empowered by saying like I'm mixed, but I'm Black, meaning I know that this tells this different story than me just being Black. But in here, my upbringing and who I am and stuff like that is more Black than my face, you know, my skin. So I think it makes sense. And the fact that we get together to talk about it, I think helps us to heal.
Oh, absolutely. I think that you know, I was a little bit like lost, even after that the dance course, which I explored a lot, the aspects of my body, especially my hair. But I still didn't dialogue with somebody else about that because we didn't get to there. We are still like, you know, because there's a lot of violence against Black people. It's just like people think Brazil is a racial democracy just because you didn't have a official apartheid, but it's pretty the same. Actually, it's pretty the same.
Yeah,
it's just not official, but it's pretty the same. So, I still felt like, oh my God, I conquered this little bit. I kind of lost it by talking about mixedness. I had this feeling, and by what I can read now, I still have. I feel glances of it here and there about people discussing why Brazil should adopt this U.S. system, if yes or not, if it's empowering or not. I actually don't think it's empowering because it comes from the top.
Yeah,
it's not something that people feel.
Right.
And so we shouldn't really adopt it. But can I discuss it here? If I discuss it here, I lose the few friends I have done already.
Oh no!
I'm not gonna say anything. So, but God.
It's a challenge. It's a challenge.
But here, back in UK, I feel really okay talking about that because people can also mix it. You know, you in any forms you go, you have mixed other backgrounds. There is many, even white are split in shades. So here is much easier to say you're mixed. That thing,
right.
Even in Brazil, to say, oh, I'm mestizo is the word for mixed. Even if you say the people who look at you, what are you talking about? And it's like we are so immersed and so generational that when you ask are you mixed? What are you talking about? People don't know
Crazy.
it. We don't discuss our heritage at all. Oh, so I had this indigenous great grandmother. She was actually a result of a rape. This is what they say, that she resulted as a rape of an indigenous woman. But she was pretty proud about herself. But we didn't. He didn't talk about it with her children, not with her grandchildren, and then not with me.
Yeah.
And then this history about my father being maybe ashamed of his color.
Yeah.
It looks like it's something. So it might bring so bad emotional remembrance that people avoid talking about it, and also because some of the history, they're not, most of the mixedness, they come from violence. So
it comes from violence. Yeah.
It's a sort of once I even made a post about it, how to do it for mixedness. It's like I threw it there and see if people understand it, and people didn't. And then I had to explain, and then people would say, "Oh, I got at least three people saying that some of their ancestors were indigenous women called kidnapped."
Yeah.
And even I have a friend and descend of a kidnapped indigenous woman. But people they barely talk about it. So and not only on your family, yourself, you don't talk it collectively.
Collectively,
in your school, you don't talk it. Yeah, you don't talk. So maybe it's something so painful that people just don't want to talk about.
Yeah, and I get it. I do. But because at this point we're multi-generational, like some of us need to have a connection, and like, you acknowledge that. I mean, because as an American, or I think anybody on the Western Hemisphere, South American, North American, Central American, there is violence, kidnapping, rape in our story. There just is. So, okay, we know it's out there. Let's not pretend it didn't happen, because if we do, it's just going to get worse. Whereas, like, for me, I can be proud that I'm a mixed Black person. I can be proud that I'm a mixed Asian person. I struggle with being a mixed British Caucasian person, because the colonizer of all colonizers, like they went all over the world capturing people. So if not for them doing what they did.
But then if you think on this side, Japanese during the war, they made terrible things to Chinese.
Oh yeah, the Japanese are also the Asian colonizer. Like, because like my whole situation is somebody from somewhere else came in and messed up other people. Like when I have Korean friends or Chinese friends and they're like, "Oh, Japanese," and I'm like, "Yeah, I know. Sorry." Like, what can I do? It's sorry. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, it's the history. We acknowledge it. And then we also embrace what we have. So in my case with the British side, I like my tea, which I know that there's colonization in the tea as well. But there's a lot of the culture I reject because it doesn't include me as a mixed person or a brown person. Same with Japanese. There's aspects of the culture I absolutely love. There's a lot that rejects me as a mixed person. So I reject that.
Well, when I made my DNA test, I got shocked because I think I got 57% of Iberian DNA.
Okay.
Which I don't know which is Portuguese, which is Spanish.
Right.
And then there is Jewish, and then there is volcanic. And volcanic or Polish. It's volcanic, but I think there is a hint of East Europe.
Okay.
But then I think, well, because they were all also really nasty colonizers. But one thing I like to think is that they don't represent the full of their culture.
It's not the full picture. Right?
And then the problem is, what are you proud now of the aspects of your culture?
Right.
Are you still proud that these people invaded other lands?
Yeah.
Or are you proud that, I don't know, other aspects, I know, your culture, in music, or
right,
food,
or exactly,
invention, science. Well, like British had Stephen Hawking. He's
Right.
British.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to be proud of, but maybe you don't have to put Hernan Cortez on a pedestal and make a stage
Right.
for him.
Right. Exactly.
You shouldn't celebrate it on the same way you celebrate science, discovering
Right.
science.
Right.
But people,
Exactly.
they usually some people they put in the same platform,
But some people also reduce the science a little bit lower than like the colonizer.
Pretty much. And they pretty take a lot of the patents. There are people that they patent Amazonic plants.
Yeah.
The pharmacy, but I mean, I know it happens to you, and then they brag. But if you learn a little bit more about history, you kind of can know what a bit you can be proud about.
Yeah.
And also, I think it's changed. You can always change with the passage of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was a big fan of Pablo Picasso.
Mm-hmm.
Until I learned.
Yeah, exactly.
And I put money on a ticket to see one of his exhibitions, and then I learned he was and I was just sort of, I can't believe people still promote him, because there are many other artists in contemporary artists with not the same moment as him. Why he should get so promoted? You have loads of other artists.
It is.
And then I just okay, I did it. I'm just not gonna keep doing it, and that's it.
Right. As we educate ourselves, it changes who we support, who we care about, whose story we want to keep telling. I think the big part of doing Militantly Mixed was because I wanted to be able to find stories for people that were like us, and I couldn't find them historically. So I found them contemporarily, that's the way to get what I wanted out of it. In the same way of like, okay, let's ignore Pablo Picasso now, but let's look at somebody right now who's out here doing something, and maybe they have a better message, maybe they're a better person, hopefully, so I can support them. It's education is how we're going to both not make the same mistakes of the past, but also be able to like draw a line of like, from here on, I'm excited about who I am because of my heritage. Here below, I'm acknowledging that there was things that were horrible about the people I come from, but those people are not me. And I'm going to move forward. And
I'm going to make something
positive.
different.
I'm going to do more work. Exactly.
I'm going to do something different with this legacy.
Exactly.
And
100%.
I don't know. Well, you had, I don't know if you didn't really have your parents how do you say that word in English? We're talking about it. Your parents didn't have your back when you were
right. So they were both mixed too, but they didn't really talk about it too much.
Okay.
So like my mom is half Japanese and her white father is he's from the Appalachian area of the United States, which is a mix of like Scottish, Irish, and English people who have been here since like the 1700s. So they're old settlers, and like they've been here for a really long time. And then on my dad's side, my dad is half Black and half Caucasian British. His mother came from England. My Japanese grandma came from Japan. So it's not like we weren't aware of mixedness. We had two different colored grandparents on both sides of the family. I have two different colored parents. So there was little talk about it, but it really wasn't like, how is this going to affect you and how I'm going to help you maneuver? So as I'm coming home one day being like, why do people think I'm not Black? Clearly I'm Black, because in my view, I clearly was. I had no way of somebody informing me I wasn't until outsiders told me, like, you're very pasty for someone who thinks you're Black. You know what I'm saying? So when I would get upset about it, it would be dismissed as kind of like that's not important. Race is not important. Move on with your life.
With me, it was just the opposite. Why do these people say I am? Or why they look at me? Or they throw, well, in school, I studied at one school that was pretty like a provincial, whitish, middle class. I came from really nice, smooth vibe schools, and then I just were through a big place. I was first in São Paulo, then we moved to a place that was a big city as well, and then we moved to this village, and then and they were all white, and I just got like, what is just happening? They were so mean.
Yeah.
And I don't think my mom would notice that. Actually, my mom compared me with Angelina Jolie 2 or 3 years ago, and I was I was shocked. Mom, I didn't ask her why, but
she's blue eyes and white skin.
Yeah, and I was just like, wow, this is somebody should save her. But I think she didn't see me as somebody different. Probably she just saw me as somebody white with a tan, despite she always said that my color was beautiful. We never discussed race. So sometimes when I came from school, I couldn't even talk about that because her only answer would be what you said, or race doesn't matter. So I just stopped. At that moment, I just stopped talking.
Yeah. And the way it's dismissed, I think, has a lot to do with sort of how we felt growing up, too. Like, if I'm really upset about this and my parents are telling me this is not an important thing to be upset about, then I'm like, am I dumb? You know, like, do I not understand? You know, so then you sit there and you're a kid with no language to explain what you're going through and no parent or authority figure to accept what you're going through and saying, I don't know how it feels for you, but let me listen. You know, like there's things like that I think that the current generation of parents could learn from, regardless of the race of them or their children, of saying like, I hear that you're experiencing something that I'm unfamiliar with. Let me just listen to you. You know, like, I don't care what the topic is. Parents need to normalize that treatment of their children.
Yeah, they need to learn that it's okay. Of course, you have a roof and you have shoes and you have food and you have good education, but we still have emptiness.
We need support.
We need to We need to be listened. We need to, or even if they don't know, sorry, I don't know what to do. Give them a hug. Then Google it. I don't know. Maybe on the next time it happens, you knew. So I think this in Brazil is still. I think people talk like about race a bit more about race, but they don't talk about mixedness. And it's not something you talk with kids. It's not something that is really normalized now. You don't see it as important. Of course, that I think a lot more black children black monoracial children are gonna grow up much more empowered.
Right.
But we are gonna have this thing about when somebody is mixed, which is pretty common in Brazil. When somebody really look a bit of both, this still can be pretty. It still can happen, as it happens to me or to you.
Yeah.
Because we don't look monoracial, so.
Right. We are getting a little bit close to the end of the time, but before I ask the final question that I always ask, I do want to give you credit for something that I don't know if you 100% realize you had an impact on me for. I've been talking about wanting to shave my head for like 10 years. And I have been a chicken about it for part of it. And part of it, I'm just very dismissive of it. I explored my mixed race hair journey through coloring my hair like an anime character, through straightening it to try to make it look something, to putting curly perms in to try to make it look more mixed. I've run the gamut. When I started talking about wanting to shave my head, you were one of the people who were like, do it. I was so liberated when I've done it in the past. And you were I know you were just talking about your own experience, but you were talking about like, it was part of the experience for you, it was part of the journey, and it was important to you that you went through it. And listening to you say it more than almost any other person, because I've had other women tell me, oh, I had done it and I did this or whatever, but you and I being in a more similar situation of being mixed women, having a mixed race hair journey where we've talked about like how sometimes our hair has impacted how we feel about mixed race people. You were the last story that made me say, all right, I'm gonna do it. And I did it like a week later. So I don't know if you know that. But you are really the reason that I actually wanted to.
Oh, that's really nice. And the only thing that holds me back with my hair is because, well, I'm a female. People say I look good. So if I want to have a job, I think, I can't have my hair done like this, like that. So it's a bit more of advantage. Otherwise, because I'm not really patient to treat hair, I would just have it shaved and have wigs.
Yeah.
And that's it. So
yeah,
it really mean a lot for me to know that I had a good part of it.
It was you. Like, I have friends that have done it before. I've been told, yeah, it's great. But you, more than anybody else, I have a closer story to. And it was okay, well, if it affected another mixed woman this way or mixed person this way, then this is actually something I should consider. So I wanted to thank you for that.
When I did the first time, when I was on that school, I told you that people were really mean to me. They threw a lot of paper balls in my hair. So at a certain point, and one day I straightened it, not with chemical, but just with it. And everybody laughed at me. And then I just thought, and my family were really keen to make my straight every week. And then I thought, what? But I didn't shave. My mom didn't let me shave. And then I kept my hair short. And then when I had my first opportunity, zoom, shave it out. And goodness, it was really nice.
Yeah, I can't stop rubbing it. I know you said you also did that too. Like, you just want to touch it all the time.
Really nice.
I enjoy it.
Very nice.
Yeah, I appreciate you for that. All right, but we are getting to the end of the show. So why don't we ask I like to ask everybody at the end of every show, what is the thing that you love most about being mixed? Because of all the stuff we go through, it's nice to kind of end on a positive note. So what is it that you love the most about being a mixed person?
I think what I love most is this feeling I had at the beginning of not belonging. I think it helped me to find other ways of living and other ways of thinking that lead me to learn language and leave the country and travel. So I think there is both sides. At the beginning, I was really worried. Oh, if I don't belong, what? And then I just, as I don't belong, I go.
If I don't belong anywhere, then I belong everywhere.
Exactly. Yeah. But I was also worried. At a certain point, I was also worried. I don't belong nowhere, so what's going to be with me? The same thing had different sides. But this belonging or not belonging, sort of now it's sort of gone.
Yeah.
Because but what I really like what I can say about me mix is this, which is now it's pretty like it doesn't matter anymore. For me, it doesn't matter anymore. It's curious because I first felt I don't belong. I found out that there's actually nobody belongs.
Yeah, right.
We all belong to the world, I think.
Yeah.
And this is a pretty illusional thing if you think you belong. But well, so I. Despite I really think I belong to Militant Mix and belong to mix the rest people.
Yes.
But it's not the same way as before. Because I think before I would feel incomplete. I would get anxious and I would long for that feeling. And now it's more like if it doesn't happen, it's okay. I am already myself.
Right.
But
awesome.
But yeah, this belonging I think is my favorite thing about being mixed.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for doing this. And thank you for being my first video solo interview. I'm really excited. We're going to share this across our social media platforms. Before we get out of here, is there any last little words that you have?
Keep the mix as fuck.
Yes, be a mixed ass self.
I mean, be as mixed as self.
Yeah.
And if you don't want, it's also okay. Just to remind you.
Just be comfortable inside.
Be comfortable on yourself. Whatever, if you're mixed or not, just feel comfortable.
Right.
But if you feel comfortable being mixed, be mixed as self. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Militantly Mixed is a Maine Hustle Media podcast, produced and hosted by me, Charmaine Fury. Music is by David Bogan the One. You can follow us on social media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Militantly Mixed. If you'd like to become a sponsor of Militantly Mixed, please go to patreon.com/militantlymixed for monthly sponsorship or paypal.me/militantlymixed for a one-time only donation. And if you like what you hear on Militantly Mixed, please subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to be your mixed ass self.
Maine Hustle Media. Turn your side hustle into your main hustle.